Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cricket Unfiltered. It's our World Cup final preview. That's right, India host Australia. A phenomenal event is ahead of us. I'm Menners. I'm joined by Gav, Joshi. Well, we're on the eve of something special, Gav, with two great teams locking horns.
We are definitely, but what I've just been speaking to a few people, journalists, former cricketers, Ahmedabad is going crazy, man. As you can't find hotel accommodation, you can't find a ticket anywhere. I've heard of people actually driving 2,000 kilometers to get into Ahmedabad. They even think of locking out people from coming into Ahmedabad. So it is going to be completely a sea of blue. I mean, you talk about home support. I mean, I think there's going to be about maybe 70 odd people who might be supporting Australia in that ground. But apart from that, it's going to be a huge challenge for Australia.
I was reading something today. Isn't it true that though obviously the crowd is going for India, that a lot of these fans do love the Australian team. They love a lot of the Australian players due to their involvement in the IPL. So it's, a perfect matchup for the Indian fans.
It is. It is. Definitely. I mean, they value all those players, but I mean, look, right now, I think that the patriotic support for India, it just keeps rising. And especially, it's also more sort of player orientated. I think even, there'll be supporters who will be going there. And in fact, of course, cheering for India is one thing, but they actually want one particular player to do so well, whether that's Rohit, whether that's Virat. And similarly, I think that they might have that soft spot for some of the Australian players where you're like, well, I want India to win, but I really like Steve Smith, or I want to see Mitchell Starc take a couple of wickets, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And I think the fans still probably want a close enough contest. I think speaking to a couple of people who went to that semi-final, they felt it was a great semi-final where, Indian supporters did get tense, but India did win quite comfortably at the end. So look, it's going to be phenomenal. 130,000. I mean, just got the details of the amount of shows that are going to be happening. There's going to be an air show. There's going to be at first drinks interval. There's going to be some singers and dancers, and it's just going to be a absolute festival. So it's going to be difficult for the players maybe to concentrate on the game.
Yeah, I mean, this will be the biggest game in India for a long, long time. I can't think of a bigger occasion.
I just lost you there, Menace.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, this would be the biggest game in India, for a long, long time.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I'm curious to see what the TV ratings are. I think we're looking at, well, probably nearly 600, 700 million people, possibly, at least pushing to, 500 million people who will watch this just in India. So, yeah, absolutely. It's on a Sunday afternoon. I can guarantee most Indians love a siesta on a Sunday afternoon, but I don't think, well, they might even do that if Australia's batting tomorrow and Marsh and Head get off to a good start along with Warner. But I think tomorrow night, I think you think it's hard to believe who isn't going to be watching cricket tomorrow. Maybe a couple of the pilots, maybe train drivers and a few doctors, but apart from that, I think everyone will be glued to their television screens.
Wow, well, you've set the stage for what's going to be an epic event. And speaking of siestas, I think you and I might need a siesta on Sunday to prepare us for what will be a long night ahead. Need to keep my wits about me. So I wanted to talk with you about where this game could be won and lost for both teams. India, obviously the heavy favourites, but, Australia have shown that on their day they can beat anyone. But before we get into that, this episode of Cricket Unfiltered is brought to you by NordVPN. So you can get a special offer by heading to nordvpn.com/cricket unfiltered. And it's never been a better time to sign up for a VPN because wherever you are in the world, you can never miss a ball of the cricket by switching your virtual location so you can use your sports viewing app wherever you are. And, during the World Cup final, you don't want to be missing any of that. So head to nordvpn.com/cricket unfiltered. The link is in the show notes, but if you're a subscriber to this podcast, you get a great offer. All right, Gav, now it's time to get down to business. India just look stacked. I mean, I've got the stats up here for me. Virat Kohli, 711 runs. Iyer, 526 runs. Sharma, 550 runs. Then you've got Rahul with 386 runs and Gill with 350 runs. It's just hard to see a chink in that armor of the top order. And, yeah, is there any weakness there?
Not in the top five. No, I think it's the most complete five in at the World Cup, and that's why India's been doing so well. 6 downwards, possibly. Suryakumar Yadav. What if India is 4 for 100 tomorrow? Can he play that long innings? I think that's the big question. That's where Australia will look to target India. It hasn't happened, but if they pick up those 4 wickets early, or even at 4 for 153, Suryakumar Yadav's generally come in with only maybe 10 odd overs left, and that's when he's at his best, because in those 30 balls he can get 60 runs. But he hasn't been exposed that much. He hasn't had a lot of game time. Jadeja, yes, he's terrific. And then you have, there are some doubts. Talks about even Ashwin playing this game. I don't think it would happen. I don't think India will take that risk, although it's going to be.
So if Ashwin were not to play, who would they? If Ashwin were to play, who would they leave out?
Siraj will get left out. I think Shami has to play, but I don't think that would happen. Just hearing, and I think it might have been the quote from the ground staff. They said, around 310 could be a very, very good score batting first, and it could be defended as well, because under lights it could get tricky under batting. So if the curator is saying that, yep.
So what you were saying then about maybe Sky at 6 being where Australia could target. So do you think a lot of this World Cup final depends on how Australia's opening bowlers go against the India top order, bearing in mind that if India get away, it's going to be very hard to stop them. So it really comes down to Australia being able to take some early wickets.
No, absolutely. We saw what Josh Hazlewood can do. We know Mitchell Starc. I think so. I think Australia, to have a chance, they need to have India 3 down pretty early. But that's why I think KL Rahul is so important. I think he's that number 5 who can accelerate. He can play those big innings. He pulled off that brilliant run chase in that opening match against India when against Australia, when India were 3 for 3 or 3 for 2 or whatever they were. But so I think he's the important wicket. And so you see a lot of those Indian batsmen can bat for that long time. They know how to do it. So I think so. You're absolutely spot on. That battle up front, especially, look, if Australia can bat first, I think Australia should look to bat first here. There should be no hesitation. Definitely. I mean, look, there could be a due factor, but Australia should forget that. Tomorrow runs on the board, or on Sunday runs on the board are premium. Australia bat first. They have to score whatever they can, right? And believe they can defend it. That's the Australian style. Forget about everything in the past. Forget about that. If the due comes, it comes. You can't control that, but you can control the fact that you can bat first and put India under pressure. If India bats first and gets, close to 280, 300, it's going to be a little bit difficult. Then you probably want the due to come. You want a lot more factors to run in your favor. So I think Australia's got to bat first 100% and not worry about the due factor. And that's where I think if the curator's right, if the underlights, the ball does a little bit, you nick off Kohli, Rohit early, you never know. You just never know. As a stroke maker, he's been told to play his own game. He'll offer you a chance. We saw that at 2 for 2 in that first game. He tried to hit the ball on the rise, hit it straight to cover. You could do it again. But that's Australia's best chance, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I think bat first, set a big target if you can. And I think India will probably look to do the same. I think they will probably be thinking the same way. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think India will chase. I think their script and, under lights, you've seen how lethal Shami is. A lot of focus on Shami, but watch out for Bumrah tomorrow. If whatever India do, bat first, bowl first, I think his first spell could set the tone for India. Yeah, I think so. A little bit like that 2011 World Cup. There was some nerves. I think there's more expectation on that 2011 Indian cricket team than this one. Some might argue that because, like Tendulkar, and it's been 30 years since they've won the World Cup. This has only been sort of 12 years. And they were playing against Sri Lanka. By no disrespect to them, but I think this Australian team that
it's a
mentally
big occasion.
It's a big occasion. So
and it's also a chance for a bit of revenge for India, having lost the 2003 final to Australia all those years ago. Can they get one over the Aussies? You mentioned the Shami and Bumrah, but just, that's when you look at the stats, how, this Indian team is complete. Unlike when you look at the Australian stats where the bowling's been a bit ropey, you've got Mohammad Shami, 23 wickets at 9. You've got Bumrah, 18 wickets at 18. You've got Jadeja, 16 wickets at 22. And then you got Yadav and Siraj, who have, played their roles and offered good support. So it's such a well-balanced bowling attack added to that top order. It just looks like such a juggernaut of a team. It's almost that Australia are hoping for just a little bit of an off night to give them a window of opportunity, because if the Indian team plays to their potential, it's hard to see Australia really being able to match them for 100 overs of the contest. But another area that I think is really important. So, okay, the new ball for Australia against India's top order, big contest. My other area of where I think is really important is the Australia's middle order against India's slow bowling in the middle overs, because we've seen consistently Australia have got off to good starts, but they haven't been able to capitalize on them. They haven't been able to, on occasion, profit from the good start. So, I think if Head, Warner or Mitch Marsh could play a match-winning innings, 150, that could win a game. But even if we get off to a fast start and lose a couple of wickets, we've got to capitalise in the middle order. And that, to me, is another big matchup. Australia's middle order against India's spin.
Yep, well said. I think, Australia's target will be similar. I think Australia will play the same team. Marnus will play in the middle. I think, they'll look for, that 100 runs again, in sort of the 15 overs or 10 overs. And, after that, let one of the batters carry on. Marnus can play a bit of fiddle, even if he scores 50 or 60 balls, you're at 200, and then tee off to get another 70, 80, 90, that's sort of the last 10 overs. That will be Australia's plan. And I think one player that Australia has an option, either they go after Jadeja or they go after Kuldeep. I think they'll look to go after Kuldeep Yadav. I think Jadeja can be a difficult customer, especially if the ball grips. It's just, we see against finger spinners, while I think Kuldeep might be the man. Australia have to pick a player. Now, that could be Glenn Maxwell. It could be, Marnus playing his reverses and so forth, to go after Kuldeep Yadav. I think he's the person that they need to target, because India don't have a sixth bowling option. It could be Kohli could bowl. So I think him and Siraj are two guys I think Australia will target. Siraj has a phenomenal record against left-handers. So his battle up front with Warner and Head is going to be terrific. But I think Australia should go after Kuldeep and almost assign somebody to do that job. If Kuldeep goes to 70 odd with just one wicket or 80 odd, I think Australia will be happy even to give Jadeja 50, 55 and then make a big score. But I think Kuldeep Yadav, I think Australia target him. He's probably the least experienced. And the other one is Mohammad Siraj. I think they're the two that Australia need to go after.
I mean, it's a tall order for Australia, because Yadav's been conceding at just 4.32 runs per over right through this World Cup. And the way Australia's batting has been against spin, it doesn't give you much confidence. I mean, is there another tactic they could take where they just try and milk the spinners, where they, go after the new ball, play almost a very traditional 50-over game and milk the bowlers through the middle overs, and then just try and accelerate in the last 10 overs and not take too many risks?
Look, I don't see Australia doing that. Yes, there is an option. What they have to consider, and I think Pat Cummins spoke about this after that first game against India, because Australia only got 200 on. A 225 would have possibly made a bigger difference. Those 30 runs. So it's fine to come out and evaluate. And I think Rohit Sharma talked about this in a game during the league matches, where he said, I think it might have been the one against England, where India only scored 230 runs. But Rohit Sharma said, while batting, I realized this is not a 280 pitch. We got to get to 240, and he changed his game. He needed to play it for a long time. So if that's Warner, that's Head, that's Mitch Marsh, whoever it is, yes, I understand the game tactic is to go hard, but while going hard, if you get to that 80 in 10 overs and you realize the ball's going to spin, it's gripping, and it's not going to be easy for even a Maxwell to just blast. You need to bat out time. Even if you score 100 of 100 balls or 110 balls, that's fine. So I think that's what Australia need to keep in mind. You can't just go with that policy. We're going to go hard. That's our game plan, and we're happy to lose in that manner. That's fine. But if the game changes, the pitch changes its nature, and it's expected to do so, then you just have to adjust and become a little mindful. Even if that means, I wouldn't be surprised, Manners, and I don't think Australia would do this, but even that means promoting someone up the order. If they get off to a fast start, 3 for 150 in 20 overs, put Maxwell up there. Let him score that 20-25. I don't mind that. I really don't. I don't think Australia would do it, but I think just have what's in front of you in your mind. Don't come out fixated. Change your game if it needs to. And I think Pat Cummins addressed that in that first game. Absolutely. You just got to have that, game awareness. And look out for Smithy. I think Smithy's due for a big knock tomorrow.
I agree. We'll get to that in a minute. Just a couple more points before we wrap this up. You said about Australia sort of taking their time and everything. The one thing that is evident in World Cup finals, you can add, say the team bats first and makes 230. That's like 250 in a normal game, or say the team bats first makes 280. That's like 300 because of the extra pressure of a final. So I think you got to bear that in mind as well. And we've seen that. Australia just sort of fell over the line, chasing a low total against South Africa. I've got another question for you. Adam Zampa, he had a tough semi-final against South Africa. Do you think India will target him as well?
Yes. I mean, look, he's had enormous success against Kohli. I actually didn't think he bowled as badly in that first game against India, where I think his figures were 6 overs for or more than that. I think he went for more than 7 runs and over. And KL Rahul played some exquisite shots in that first over that sort of went Adam Zampa think a bit. India will go after him, no doubt, and I think Zampa, given that he bowls, Pat Cummins likes to hold him for that 3 or maybe 4 overs after. If Suryakumar Yadav comes to the crease, I think that's going to be a really good battle as well. So look out for that. But yeah, I think a big game for Adam Zampa as well. And Glenn Maxwell, I think, how do India play him? Do they target him? Let's not forget, Ahmedabad's quite a big ground. So I think boundary where the boundary fielders are. I think Australia probably athletic in terms of catching up, probably a little bit marginal better than India, I think, with their fast bowling fielding qualities.
Yep.
And the other point you mentioned about pressure, Menners, is India hasn't been put under immense pressure in this World Cup. I mean, you look at that first game, 3 for 3. New Zealand pushed them in the semi-final at a stage. England were none for 30, chasing 230. But then that's a long way out before the finish line. When it gets, India hasn't required, a 40 of 24 balls. India hasn't been required with the opposition. It required, they haven't put it under the pump yet. And how do they do that? Well, I think Australia's gone through that. They've gone through that in that semi-final.
I mean, how quiet will the crowd be if Sharma or Kohli gets out early? That'll put the players off. All of a sudden, there's 140,000 people, sitting there in stunned silence.
Absolutely. I mean, that you look at that 2011 World Cup, and Tendulkar went early, Sehwag went early, and the crowd went. MS Dhoni is so mentally strong, he was able to pull it off. I think KL Rahul's got that ability, but underneath that, I think that's where 6 and 7 are. And India's 8, 9, 10, 11 hardly bat. I think Australia's got a sniff. I think definitely, but geez, this Indian team's been so clinical. Rohit Sharma's just. I can't see him changing his game. I think the big one for Australia tomorrow, Shubman Gill. I think not enough people have talked about him. I mean, you talked about the semi, you talked about the Iyer, you talked about Kohli, you talked about Roach. I mean, Shubman Gill got an 80, and he probably has a bit of less pressure. I recall him playing in the under-19 World Cup final, and a coaching staff telling me Shubman was so focused, like he was, carrying on, but you just knew he was going to get India across the line that day, and he played a really good innings. So I think he's the big candidate tomorrow. I think Australia. He'll just hopefully that he doesn't go under the radar, but it's going to be an absolutely fascinating contest.
Agree. So it's prediction time, Gav. I'll give mine in a second, but what I want from you is who you think will win the game, and give me maybe a few players you think could swing the contest either way.
If I was going to pick my man of the match, I'm slightly leading towards, I think someone like a KL Rahul. Watch out for him. I think he and batting first, bowling first. I think he's vital. I think he just. Yeah, we talked about the Indian top four and probably not the strongest sort of lower to tail enders. He's the key. You break India to Surya Kumar Yadav. To KL Rahul, and I think you could.
Well, that's a big one. He'd be a huge hero. He'd be a hero in India if he's the player of the match. And who do you think is going to win tomorrow night?
Look, I can't see Australia stopping this juggernaut.
Wow.
I think it's too good. I think so. There is hope, no doubt about it. But Meadows, it's all about exhaustion. It's about turning yourself on. I think that whole, coming from Kolkata, playing in such a close final, the travel, the recovery, long World Cup. I mean, yeah, I think Australia might have run its race already. I think India's just, 9 wins in a row, I think it is, or 10, whatever it is. I think there's still a little bit more left in this Indian tank than Australia. What about you?
Yeah, well, players that I think will decide the contest. So, I mean, I really think David Warner, he's the sort of player that could anchor a huge Australian innings. He's the sort of player that when he gets going, he doesn't just make 100, he can make 150. He can make big daddy hundreds, and that's what wins World Cup finals. So, I think there's a part of me that, I'd love to see him as player of the match in his what could be his final 50 over game for Australia. Of course, Steve Smith, I agree with you. He's due and he's a player not to be discounted. But then, my other player for Australia who I think, could be decisive is Mitchell Starc. We saw a glimpse of his best in the semi-final. And he's the player that you mentioned there. He can get you into that middle order quickly. India can look up at the scoreboard and have their top order chopped off. So they're the two Australians. But then conversely, I'm really worried about Rohit Sharma because, as you said, he can just come out all guns blazing. And Australia actually haven't coped that well in the last couple of months when they're really getting torn apart. They can sort of start to go missing. So if Sharma comes out and sets the tone early, Australia might get walloped in this final. So that's kind of my predictions. I mean, I think Jadeja could take 8-9 wickets the way we bat against him. So he'll be the player. He could take a 10-for in a World Cup final, the way we've historically batted against him. So look out for Jadeja. But I'm actually going to tip an Australian win for one reason only. I think Australia have nothing to lose. India are the such heavy favourites, but if you look at this Australian side, it is littered with match winners, and I just think tomorrow night there'll be enough match winners in that Australian team to get it done. And if they don't get it done, I think they'll push India really hard, and we'll be really proud of them.
Fair call, no problems. Maybe Pat Cummins is going to take 6, and he's going to show and say in a match presentation, thanks Andrew Manzul and the cricket
for all your support,
all the support over these years, and I want to make sure that I'm going to lift this trophy again in 4 years' time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for our World Cup final preview. Enjoy the game, fans. This is an occasion to be savoured. It's been a long slog of a group stage, so I'm glad we're there now. And we've got two fantastic teams. Gav, we'll be catching up after the final to review it. But yeah, enjoy.
Will do, and see you and talk to you in that day on Monday. I'm sure we'll have a lot to break down on what has happened, what would happen on Sunday night.
Absolutely. So, listeners, hit us up on social media. Send us your predictions for the final. If you disagree with us, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We're at Oz Cricket Pod, AUS Cricket Pod. I'm at Amenas on Twitter. Gary's at Gamper_cricket. So you can reach out to us there and tell us what you think is going to happen tomorrow night. But enjoy the match, and we'll speak after.